shirtless and shoeless, but playing well.
Talk about beating Tiger Woods after him talking some shit.
Oh, well, I mean, I've only beaten him like twice at about 5,000 of them, but
no, it was twice. That's two more times.
7 golfers who were terrified of John Daly. You might think that sounds crazy, but he was a beast. The mullet-wearing, chain-smoking wild thing from Arkansas wasn't just winning tournaments. He was breaking the entire psychology of professional golf. When John Daly showed up to a PGA Tour event, the country club establishment feared him on levels they didn't want to admit publicly. Some feared his impossible length that made their careers obsolete overnight. Others feared what he exposed about their hidden vices. His fans were drunk and rowdy, screaming from the galleries. His swing was violent and uncontrollable. His lifestyle was a wrecking ball through the polite facade of professional golf. He represented everything the tour had spent decades trying to suppress. But why did elite golfers react this way to one man? Before August 1991, the PGA Tour was a completely different world. It was the golden age of the plotter. These were technicians who played chess on grass. Players like Corey Pavin and Fred Funk built Hall of Fame careers on precision and placement. The golf ball was a wound ballotosphere that would spin wildly if hit too hard. Drivers were persimmon wood or early unforgiving metal. The average driving distance was about 260 yards. A 270-yard drive was considered long. Anything past 280 was freakish. The psychological contract was simple. Keep the ball in play, putt well, manage your mistakes, and you could make a comfortable living. Nobody was trying to overpower golf courses. They were trying to outsmart them. Then came Crooked Stick. John Daly was the 9th alternate at the 1991 PGA Championship. He drove through the night from Memphis to replace Nick Price. Daly showed up exhausted, without a practice round, without a yardage book, and without fear. He didn't just win, he committed violence against the logic of the game. Using a grip it and rip it philosophy and an absurdly long backswing, Daly averaged 288.9 yards off the tee. While that might seem normal today, it was a statistical aberration in 1991. It was alien. He was hitting one-irons past the drivers of established stars. The first golfers terrified by Daly were his professional victims. Players like Fred Funk and Corey Pavin saw their entire business model becoming obsolete in real time. Fred Funk was one of the shortest hitters on tour, averaging around 250 yards. He built a career on being the most accurate driver in professional golf. When Daly arrived, Funk watched as Daly flew bunkers that Funk had to lay up short of. Corey Pavin represented the pinnacle of the short game wizard. He would win the US Open in 1995 with a famous 4-wood approach. But these players could not counter brute force with precision. The crowd reaction to Daly shifted everything. The fans no longer wanted methodical 4-irons, wanted to see the wild thing launch a ball into orbit. The terror was economic and existential. If Daly was the future, half the field was obsolete. On a 450-yard par 4, Daly hit 8-iron, while Pavin hit 3-iron. Daly knew the power he held. He later said he was not scared to have a long drive contest with anyone, including Tiger Woods. In 1991, he possessed a weapon that no one else had. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment below. Who do you think was the most intimidated by John Daly's presence on tour? Beyond the physical domination, Daly introduced a terror of authenticity. The PGA Tour in the early 90s was corporate sterility. Players were expected to be clean-shaven, polite, and married. They represented wholesome American values. Daly was a mullet-wearing, chain-smoking gambling addict who openly discussed his divorces and talked about his struggles with alcohol. For the fake players carefully managing their public image, Daly was a walking liability. He terrified them because he refused to play the PR game. He exposed that professional golfers were human and flawed. By living his vices openly, he made the hidden vices of others seem dangerous. Secret affairs and underground gambling suddenly felt precarious when Daly was being publicly crucified for the same behaviors he did honestly. Now let's talk about Tiger Woods. The relationship between Tiger and Daly is one of the most complex in modern golf. While Tiger intimidated the entire tour, John Daly refused to bow to the Tiger aura. This was a clash of two Americas. Tiger was the product of Earl Woods, a Green Beret who engineered his son to be a golfing machine, disciplined, corporate, calculated, and ruthless. John Daly was Arkansas chaos. Untrained, emotional, unpredictable, and self-destructive. The tension exploded at the 2019 PGA Championship at Bethpage Black. John Daly was suffering from severe osteoarthritis in his right knee. He was granted an exemption to use a golf cart under the Americans with Disabilities Act. This was controversial because walking is considered integral to major championship golf. When asked about Daly using the cart, Tiger Woods delivered a dismissal. As far as JD taking a cart, well, I walked with a broken leg, so. This referenced the 2008 US Open, where Woods won while playing on a double stress fracture and torn ACL. Woods was calling Daly soft. It was public shaming from the alpha. Daly was deeply hurt and made it clear he was not scared of Tiger. The friction went deeper. Daly criticized how Woods conducted himself early in his career. Daly prided himself on signing every autograph and staying at Hooters until 2 in the morning with fans. He viewed young Tiger as robotic and aloof. Daly felt Tiger's camp created a fake persona, while Daly was crucified for being real. Tiger represented establishment perfection. Daly represented wasted talent. Tiger avoided becoming until his own scandals. While Daly claims they have no beef, the friction remains. Tiger wasn't terrified of Daly competitively, but Tiger feared Daly aesthetically. Daly represented loss of control. For a control freak like Woods, Daly was chaos incarnate. Phil Mickelson was a different terror. If Tiger was Daly's opposite, Phil was his secret twin. Both were talented. Both had soft hands. Both were adored for their style. And crucially, both were addicted to gambling. Daly has criticized Mickelson regarding his involvement with a gambling associate. For decades, Mickelson cultivated an image as the family man. Meanwhile, Daly was the degenerate who threw $55 million off a bridge. Daly's criticism is rooted in a code of honor. The issue was hypocrisy. Daly lived his addiction in the light. Mickelson lived his in the dark. Mickelson was the ultimate fake. Mickelson was terrified of Daly because Daly was the ghost of Christmas future. Every time Mickelson looked at Daly, he saw the potential wreckage of his own life if his image collapsed. The tension is clear in their disparate treatments. Daly was suspended for his vices. Mickelson was lauded until Live Golf exposed the cracks. Daly's criticism was a warning. You can't hide who you are forever. The feud with Rory McIlroy marks a shift from personal to geopolitical. As the tour entered the 2020s, Live Golf, funded by Saudi Arabia, fractured the sport. Daly, always feeling undervalued and overpunished by the PGA Tour, sympathized with the disruptors. He begged Greg Norman for a live spot. Rory McIlroy positioned himself as the moral guardian of the PGA Tour, defending tradition against Saudi money. Daly's attack was direct and personal. He called McIlroy the PGA Tour's puppet. Daly implied McIlroy was being used by Commissioner Jay Monahan to fight a PR war that executives were too cowardly to fight themselves. Daly viewed McIlroy as a company man, a suck-up to the very establishment that had tried to control Daly for 30 years. McIlroy wasn't terrified of Daly's golf game in 2022. He was terrified of Daly's voice. Daly commands a massive, loyal demographic. The Trump country golf fan, the blue-collar worker, the anti-establishment voter. When Daly labels Rory a puppet, he weaponizes that entire demographic against McIlroy. Daly's support for Liv is consistent with his hatred of the fake establishment. To Daly, the PGA Tour is a cartel that suspends players for drinking, but takes moral high ground on money. He sees Rory as the face of that hypocrisy. Sergio Garcia and John Daly share a superficial similarity. Both are immense talents who often let their emotions derail their careers. However, their relationship soured, with Daly referencing Garcia's infamous temper. This seems contradictory. Daly is famous for smashing a fan's camera against a tree and hitting balls off beer cans. Why would he judge Sergio for a temper? The friction lies in the nature of the temper. Daly's outbursts were often directed at himself, or at the absurdity of life. They were chaotic, but they felt authentic to his struggle with alcoholism and demons. When Daly withdrew, he often went straight to the bar. Garcia's temper was characterized by petulance, blaming the course, the greens, the rain, or the golf gods. He spat in cups. He kicked shoes. To a hard man like Daly, Garcia's temper came across as spoiled entitlement rather than tortured genius. Daly likely views Garcia as another fake, a player who wants the glory but can't handle the adversity without blaming external factors. The friendship collapsed because Daly cannot respect a man he views as a crybaby. This distinction reveals Daly's code: suffer in authenticity or don't suffer at all. Garcia wanted sympathy for his struggles. Daly offered none because he saw Garcia's struggles as manufactured drama rather than genuine pain. One of the most intense, physically imposing rivalries in Daly's career was with Vijay Singh. In the mid-2000s, Singh was the #1 player in the world, a man who worked harder than anyone else, hitting balls for hours after rounds, and possessed a stoic, intimidating demeanor. The two clashed memorably at the 2005 Shell Houston Open. On the 72nd hole of regulation, Singh made a clutch par save and unleashed a violent, aggressive fist pump. Daly, watching this, took it personally. Daly interpreted the fist pump not as celebration, but as aggression directed at him. He later commented that he had never seen a fist pump out of Singh like he saw on 18. In the subsequent playoff, the tension was palpable. Daly, perhaps rattled by Singh's intensity, or trying to assert his own dominance, played the 18th hole aggressively. He dumped his drive into the water. Singh was terrified of letting Daly win. Singh knew that if Daly got momentum, the crowd, which was 100% behind the American Wild Thing, would become an unstoppable force. Singh had to crush Daly's spirit physically. Daly, in turn, was one of the few players who could physically match Singh's ball striking. The fear here was the fear of the alpha dog fight. Singh won the tournament, but the animosity of that fist pump lingered. This was not a gentleman's rivalry. This was primal. Two of the most physically dominant players on tour, battling not just for a trophy, but for dominance. Singh's fist pump was psychological warfare. Daly's aggressive play in the playoff was a refusal to be intimidated. Both men understood that in that moment, golf was secondary to proving who the true alpha was. While Daly's feuds with Tiger and Phil were complex, his hatred for Scott Hawk was simple and primal. Scott Hawk was one of the notoriously slow players on tour. He would stand over a putt for what felt like eternity, earning the nickname Hawk, as in choke, for his missed putts in critical moments. Daly plays golf by instinct. Grip it and rip it is not just a slogan. It is a neurological necessity. If Daly thinks too long, his demons creep in, doubt and anxiety. He needs speed to function. Playing with Hoch was torture for Daly. Hoch's slowness was not just annoying, it was a weapon that dismantled Daly's rhythm. Hoch was terrified of Daly in the sense that Daly's chaotic energy was the disruptor to Hoch's meticulous OCD-like routine. They were oil and water. Hoch needed control and precision. Daly needed flow and instinct. When forced to play together, both men suffered. But for Daly, Hoch represented everything wrong with modern golf. The overthinking, the caution, the fear. Daly saw Hoch as a man paralyzed by his own mind. Colin Montgomerie is the archetype of the establishment figure Daly loathed. A Scot who grew up at Royal Troon, Monty demanded absolute silence. He had rabbit ears. He could hear a camera shutter click from 200 yards away. Monty was terrified of John Daly because playing with Daly meant playing with a zoo. The Daly fan is loud, drunk, and boisterous. They would scream mashed potatoes and get in the hole. For Monty, this was hell on earth. Daly viewed Monty as soft. He saw Monty's constant complaining as a lack of toughness. Montgomerie represented the old guard of golf, the players who believed the game should be played in reverent silence on perfectly manicured courses by perfectly behaved gentlemen. Daly was the antithesis of all of that. His crowds were rowdy, his style was aggressive, his personality was unfiltered. When Montgomerie complained about noise or distractions, Daly saw weakness. The beef between them was philosophical. Montgomerie believed golf was a gentleman's game that required decorum. Daly believed golf was a sport that required courage. Their clashes were inevitable because they represented two irreconcilable visions of what professional golf should be. Looking back at John Daly's career, you see a paradox. He won two majors, the 1991 PGA Championship and the 1995 Open Championship at St. Andrews. Yet he is often spoken of as a tragedy, but there's a different interpretation. Daly was a revolution. The 7 golfers and groups we've discussed, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Rory McIlroy, Sergio Garcia, Vijay Singh, Scott Hoch, and establishment figures like Colin Montgomerie were terrified of Daly because he broke the illusion. He broke the illusion that distance didn't matter. He broke the illusion that golfers were saints. He broke the illusion that the PGA Tour was a benevolent democracy. Daly was the lion in a field of well-manicured lambs. He refused to be fake. In doing so, he made enemies of the men who relied on the artifice of the game to maintain their power and control. As Daly sits today, driving a cart on the Champions Tour, with a cigarette in his mouth and a Diet Coke in his hand, he remains what the establishment fears most: uncontrollable and unrepentant. His legacy is not about what he could have been if he had gotten his life together. It's about what he was in his prime and what he still represents: a disruptor who showed you don't need to play by their rules to matter. He showed that authenticity, even messy, chaotic, destructive authenticity, resonates more powerfully than any manufactured image ever could. The golfers who feared him weren't afraid of losing to him on the leaderboard. They were afraid of what he represented to the entire system: the end of their control over the narrative, the the exposure of their fakeness and hypocrisy, the reality that golf cannot be perfectly controlled no matter how hard the establishment tries. So let me ask you this important question. Does golf need another John Daly? Someone willing to break the rules, live authentically, and refuse to play the corporate game? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the chaos that was John Daly's career, make sure you're subscribed because we've got more stories like this coming your way.